Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're wading into some seriously provocative waters.
We really are.
We're guided by a book that definitely pulls no punches. Gordon Phillips's The Risky Reader Essays on Fallen Freedoms, Cultural Collapse, and the New America.
Whew. Yeah.
I mean, the title alone is a lot to chew on, right? But the author himself, he issues this warning right up front. Says this work might be emotionally harmful to some readers.
It's quite a statement.
It is. Yet he also promises enlightenment to the true state of the modern world. So it's quite the setup.
It absolutely is. And that's precisely our mission with this deep dive, isn't it? To explore Phillips's really radical assertions, about what he calls actual reality versus official reality.
Right.
And to unpack his, often uncomfortable claims about fallen freedoms in America. What's particularly striking, almost disarming, is his perspective. He approaches what he sees as societal collapse with this unique viewpoint.
The sixth stage of grief.
Yeah, amusement. He actually calls it amusement. It's a pretty defiant stance from the outset.
So where does Phillips even begin to take apart this reality he describes? His core premise, and he puts it bluntly,
Very bluntly.
is that nothing in the world around you today is the truth. It is all an illusion. A Potemkin village. You've been lied to nonstop your entire life about pretty much everything. Wow. And for anyone not familiar, a Potemkin village, that's like a fake front, right? Hiding something less desirable.
Exactly, a facade. And Phillips is basically saying our whole society, the structure of it, is just that, a cleverly constructed front.
That's a huge claim to kick things off.
It is, and what's fascinating is how he immediately traces this illusion, as he calls it, back to these foundational power structures.
Okay.
He describes a world run by, his terms are colorful, plutocrats, autocrats, kleptocrats, and the occasional dork.
Okay.
And governed by what he terms an invisible government, owing no allegiance and acknowledging no responsibility to the people.
An invisible government. That sounds familiar.
Well, yeah, and he points this out, too. He echoes President Theodore Roosevelt's concerns, actually, from way back, over a century ago.
Really? Roosevelt?
Yeah, he cites a 1906 quote where Roosevelt talked about this very thing, this invisible government and an unholy alliance between corrupt business and corrupt politics. Phillips is saying, look, this isn't new. It's been around.
And he certainly doesn't pull any punches talking about how this operates, does he? This invisible government.
No, not at all.
He details how this elite group, he calls them an ancient network of families, controls just immense wealth and resources.
Right.
And their methods. He lists things like lending and usury, the financing of wars, incentives, bribes, blackmail.
All the tools of control.
Exactly. All used, he claims, to direct people in power, make them do their bidding. It's a very specific and, maybe conspiratorial view of global influence.
It definitely leans that way. And building on this idea, these hidden structures, Phillips then turns his focus to the financial system.
Ah, the money.
Right. He argues that's another fundamental pillar of this whole illusion. He states that all governments throughout history have eventually come to be operated by thieves and thugs in temporary possession of territory. Strong words.
Very strong.
And a core part of his argument here is that governments inherently have no money of their own. They only get it by taxing us or, printing it.
Which sets the stage for his critique of modern finance, I guess.
Precisely. He suggests the very basis of our economy is built on this really shaky foundation of extraction, essentially.
And the implications of this invisible government. Well, it really hits home when Phillips gets into how money itself fits into this scheme.
Yeah, this is key.
He says, quite bluntly, that the Federal Reserve note, what we just call the U.S. dollar, is not a dollar in its constitutional sense.
Not technically, no.
Instead, he asserts it's just a unit of debt lent into circulation by the Federal Reserve. And he explicitly calls the Fed a private for-profit corporation that has, quote, never to this day been audited.
That's a huge statement.
It's a truly radical redefinition of the money we use every single day.
It raises a really important question, doesn't it? I mean, if the money itself is just a unit of debt.
Then what?
Well, Phillips then claims that the whole mechanism for creating it, fractional reserve banking, is essentially a Ponzi scheme.
A Ponzi scheme, how so?
Well, fractional reserve lets banks lend out most of the money they take in as deposits, basically creating new money digitally. Phillips argues this constant creation of debt-based money, it's just unsustainable. Like a Ponzi scheme, it needs more and more new money coming in just to pay off the old debts.
Okay, I see the analogy.
And in the system, he asserts that taxation becomes coerced theft of labor by the state.
Theft.
Yeah. He says what he calls the system effectively claims ownership of your earnings from birth and only, quote, graciously permits you to keep the remainder. It's just this continuous cycle of wealth extraction in his view.
Wow. And he really drives that point home when he talks about Social Security, doesn't he?
Oh, definitely.
Calling it a bookkeeping trick and declaring no lockbox, no trust fund, no funds, and might I add, no trust.
Pretty damning.
So why should you, our listener, care about such a strong claim? Well, Phillips supports this view by quoting various officials, even former President Clinton.
Right, arguing the funds aren't saved assets in some account.
Exactly. They're just claims on the Treasury that have to be paid by future taxes or more borrowing. It's not a trust fund in the way people might think.
And he doesn't stop there.
No, he takes this further and makes some pretty bold predictions for the future. Things like cash cancellation.
Programmable money.
And significant societal disorder by 2035. It paints a really stark picture of where he thinks things are headed.
It's quite dystopian.
So if this invisible government and this grand illusion are so pervasive, what does Phillips say about how the average person fits in? Or maybe how they're kept from seeing it?
Ah, yes, the normals.
Right. He calls the average person a normal, suggesting they are oblivious to the principles on which America was founded, and, because of that, easily manipulated. He actually states they'll believe just about anything if told to them by a serious-looking announcer dressed in nice business clothing.
It's a pretty cynical take on media consumption.
Yeah, he sees it as a fundamental vulnerability, like a kind of mental programming almost.
And Phillips argues this conditioning, it starts really early, particularly in the public education system.
The schools.
Yeah. He claims public schools function as social conditioning camps, or maybe community social indoctrination centers, basically designed to produce, well, his words, docile, industrious, punctual, thoughtless, and contented citizens.
That's harsh.
It is. He even quotes Bertrand Russell from like 1953, who suggested the goal of education back then was to make students incapable throughout the rest of their lives of thinking or acting otherwise than as their schoolmasters would have wished.
Wow. So he sees schools as part of the control mechanism.
That's the argument.
And Phillips contrasts this vividly with his own childhood experience, right?
He does. He describes himself as public school's worst nightmare, apparently, but says he was eventually allowed to kind of progress at his own speed and largely self-instruct. He credits that with developing his academic independence and free thought.
So he sees value in that independent learning.
Very much so. And he illustrates this with a story comparing Molly, who's homeschooled, and Brittany, who's in public school.
Right, the butterfly example.
Exactly. Molly learns about butterflies by actually chasing them with a net, going to a museum, it's hands-on, fosters curiosity. Brittany, meanwhile, she's stuck with the textbook.
A very different experience.
Totally. And he focuses on the differences in how they learn, their curiosity levels, even their socialization. He suggests Molly has more real-world interactions while Brittany is just kind of released from school into this preset social structure.
Interesting comparison.
And it's fascinating how Phillips links all this to what he sees as a broader dumbing down of America. He cites these surveys showing, significant percentages of Americans who can't identify basic historical facts or scientific ones, or even know what the U.S. Constitution is.
Not just what it says, but what it is.
Yeah, one survey he mentions found 70% didn't know its basic function as the supreme law of the land. And he says this is critical because, well, he quotes Jefferson.
Let me guess. Ignorant and free.
You got it. If a nation expects to be ignorant and free in a state of civilization, it expects what never was and never will be. Phillips uses this to really hammer home his point. You need an informed public for a free society.
Okay, so given this really quite bleak picture Phillips paints, you got the invisible government, manipulated finances, and education system designed to condition normals. What does he suggest we actually do about it?
Well, first, he posits something pretty challenging. He says many of us are living in voluntary servitude.
Voluntary servitude? How?
He argues we've willingly and consciously signed away our natural rights by converting them into privileges. We do this through all sorts of applications and licenses.
Like what?
Things like a marriage license or occupational licenses. He argues that by applying for permission, we're making an overt act of voluntary consent to be governed or regulated in that area, effectively giving up an inherent right.
So applying for a license is like giving up freedom.
In his view, yes, it shifts your standing, and this raises that important question. What's the difference between a right and a privilege, according to Phillips?
Yeah, what is it?
He stresses that no application process, nor any form to apply on, is necessary in order to invoke or exercise a natural right. Rights just are. Privileges are granted, usually after you ask for them.
Okay.
So he challenges you, the listener, to recognize when you're essentially requesting permission from the government for things that he believes should be your inalienable rights. That very act of asking, he thinks, diminishes your standing from a free individual to, well, a subject.
There's a significant shift in perspective he's pushing there.
It really is.
So if we're living in this kind of Truman Show reality, as he suggests,
Yeah.
how do we break free? What are the practical steps Phillips outlines?
Right. He does offer steps. A big one is self-education, rigorous self-education.
Reading?
Yeah, reading real history, the Constitution itself, other foundational texts. He lists some, like the Federalist Papers or Hazlitt's Economics in one lesson. Things outside the mainstream curriculum, often.
Okay, educate yourself. What else?
Get involved locally. He really emphasizes local action. Suggests things like get on the school board, support your local sheriff, maybe even run for office yourself.
So a bottom-up approach.
Exactly. It's a call for individual action and specifically local engagement where maybe you can have more impact.
Makes sense.
He also highlights some key civic responsibilities or maybe powers, like the right to bear arms.
Ah, yes.
He frames it purely as an aspect of self-defense and notes pretty pointedly, gun control isn't about guns, it's about control.
The common sentiment in those circles.
It is. And maybe even more powerfully, he brings up jury nullification.
Jury nullification. Explain
Yeah.
that a bit.
Sure. It's the idea that jurors, when deciding a case, don't just have to rule on the facts like, did the person do the thing? They can also judge the law itself.
Judge the law.
Yeah. They can decide if applying that specific law in that specific case is unfair or unjust or maybe even unconstitutional. And if they think it is, they can vote to acquit regardless of the facts, effectively nullifying the law for that case.
So jurors have that power.
Phillips argues they absolutely do. He says jurors have more power than the judge and even the entire legislature in that moment. And he tells the listener, kind of directly, if you ever get called for jury duty, you'll know what to do.
Wow. Implying a pretty significant civic duty there.
A power, really, that's often overlooked or even discouraged.
Okay. And finally, what about personal resilience, given his predictions about the future?
Right. In the face of what he sees as this accelerating downtrend of America, he offers advice for personal preparedness.
Like what? Stock up on food.
Well, it's broader than that. He says, get resilient, get diversified, get prepared, get off the grid, get back to nature. He even adds, teach your young teens to become sharpshooters, just in case.
Whoa, okay. That's specific.
It is. He also mentions networking with like-minded patriots, but then he balances it with enjoy life far from the craziness and always have fun.
So it's a mix of practical survivalism and trying to maintain some joy.
Yeah, a defiant embrace of joy, maybe, even amidst these dire predictions he's making.
Well, Gordon Phillips certainly paints a deeply critical, maybe even alarming picture of American society and government.
No doubt about it. Well, his views are definitely provocative and they challenge a lot of conventional beliefs. He consistently urges you to step outside what he calls the official reality.
Right.
To engage with information that might be uncomfortable at first, but which he believes is absolutely essential for, true freedom and self-determination. He thinks by understanding how the system really operates, individuals can start to reclaim their own agency.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now as you navigate your own reality? Phillips closes his introduction with a really profound question, I think.
What's that?
He asks, what will you have left behind as your gift to the future? May I suggest freedom? He challenges us all to consider if we're living an inconsequential life or a consequential life that helps to shape the future of civilization. It definitely leaves you with a lot to think about, doesn't it?
It really does.
Perhaps the most important question Phillips raises for all of us is this. If we truly live in a world where belief, as he puts it, requires no heavier lifting than just the willingness to believe, how much of our own perceived reality have we maybe constructed ourselves just by accepting what we've been told?
That's the core of it, isn't it? How much is real and how much is the story we accept?
Something to definitely mull over.